Hi, thanks for tuning in today. Today I'm going to be doing a discussion with Dwayne Green. We're going to be discussing Family 35. It's a unique subset of the Byzantine tradition. So Dwayne had invited me over to his channel to talk about the Greek New Testament, and really anytime someone asks me about talking about the Bible or wants to talk about the Bible, my default answer is absolutely, let's talk about the Bible. And really didn't know a whole lot about Dwayne before we started this discussion, but as we got into it, I really enjoyed, talking to him, his humility, his love for the scriptures. So if you're interested in the Greek New Testament or Bible translations, things of that nature, go ahead. I'll leave a link for his channel so you can see, what he has on his channel. This is just a brief snippet of the full discussion that we had, which ranged from textual criticism, the King James Version Bible, the longer ending of Mark, and he's broken up the discussion that we had into three parts. So if you want to see a fuller, kind of a fuller treatment of this discussion that we had, you can go over to his channel. He's broken it up, like I said, into three parts, and you can check that out. Now, what was really neat about getting to talk to Dwayne about this is he had actually done quite a bit of work in regards to this printed edition. So I think you can see, hopefully I've got it in the camera there, you can see his name in the preface to this edition of the Greek New Testament. So I would say if very many people qualify for an expert on this text, having talked to Dwayne, I don't know that he would classify himself as an expert because he's a humble guy, but he knows a lot more about this text than he knows a lot more about this text than anybody else I know personally, I'll say that. And it was really fascinating to learn more about this text. And I noticed when I had put a review of this Greek New Testament out, there was quite a bit of interest in it. Most of the discussion that revolves around Family 35 is done in Portuguese. Dr. Wilbur Pickering, who at one time was quite well known in the majority text, Byzantine text form arena, he is quite well known in that scholarly circle. In fact, he had published a book called The Identity of the New Testament, or something like that, identifying the text of the New Testament, I think it is. And Thomas Nelson had published that, and for a while it was a really important, I think it's still an important discussion of Byzantine Tax Theory. Well, Dr. Pickering slowly modified his position a little bit to prefer a particular subset within the Byzantine text. So this discussion that we're going to have kind of explores a little bit what that text is. And I think for some readers, I've tried to make this channel sort of a place where, critical text people are certainly absolutely welcome. And I try to put content that they're going to enjoy. But I've tried to carve out a little bit of a niche on this channel, a little bit of a niche, is that how you'd say it? A little bit of a niche of this on this channel for people who are particularly interested in the Byzantine text, the Textus Receptus, Family 35, any of those more traditional text positions, because I found on YouTube there wasn't a lot of people there were not a lot of people that were doing videos kind of geared towards that. You can find some on the Textus Receptus, but not a whole lot in regards to like Byzantine priority or anything like that. So I want to add this as a contribution. I hope you enjoy the discussion.
Interesting families, though, and this is some work that Wilbur Pickering did on Family 35, and so I think all of us at one point had heard someone say, there's no two manuscripts that are exactly alike. Every single one is kind of different from the other. But Wilbur Pickering, he had done some objective research to show that there's a number of manuscripts that, based on the entirety of a book, is letter by letter perfect with each other. I mean, this isn't for every single book, but a lot of the smaller epistles, they match 100%. The Gospels, we're talking about like 4, 5, maybe 6 variants amongst the entire Gospel.
Yeah.
So the Family 35 is pretty interesting. For those who come from like an older time, it's also known as Koine Revised, or KR, based on von Soden's work. But it's interesting how controlled the text was, and how much care the copyist had made within that specific stream of manuscripts. So, kind of an interesting subset of the Byzantine text type.
So, yeah, just to put in perspective what you're saying there, when you're talking about 6 variants in a gospel, the flagship manuscripts of the Alexandrian line, you have Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus. Between the two of them, you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 variants just in the Gospels alone, over 3,000 variants. So those are their, some of their star witnesses for the Alexandrian text, and you have 3,000 differences between them just in the Gospels. So that kind of puts some perspective. When you say 6 variants, you're talking about basically nothing.
Nothing, yeah. Family 35 is a very significant family, or a very significant subtype within the Byzantine text form. So it's neat. It's neat.
Yeah, I think it's neat too. One of the things I like about Family 35, and it's not my primary reader, I like it has a very good apparatus. Family 35, as it's been printed by Dr. Wilbur Pickering, has a very good apparatus. The other thing I like about it is, one of the things that happens with the critical text is, from 1881, when the Westcott and Hort text came out, each edition of the critical text has made a continuous text, that is nowhere in existence in any manuscript. The overall product isn't, right? You can't find the Westcott and Hort text before 1881. It doesn't exist. There's no manuscript that contains that. But we're talking about even in short segments, right? By the time reason eclecticism is the methodology, what's called, of putting these manuscripts, they go variant by variant. So every time they have a difference in the manuscripts, they examine that difference and try to decide if that's right. Well, they can make a compelling case for that one variant, but then you have variant number 2, and then they use a different set of perhaps manuscripts to get that variant. And even over short segments, and Dr. Maurice Robinson has shown, there's even just verses that by the time you put all those variants together, like a puzzle, right? We use Codex, I'm just throwing out some random manuscripts, but we use Codex Vaticanus here, and we use Codex Sinaiticus for this reading, and we use another set of manuscripts for this reading. By the time you get to the end of the verse, there's no manuscript in the world that reads like that.
Right.
So what's the probability? What's the probability that was the original reading? So you've put it together like a combination of a lock, right? What's the probability that you've gotten those? You've got 7 variants in a row, say. What's the probability that you've gotten all those things right? And it's nowhere in existence anywhere. So you've created something that doesn't exist in our manuscripts by the time you're done. The good thing about Family 35 is you basically just reproduce what's actually in real manuscripts.
That's right. Yeah, and there's very little text critical work that has to be done within that text type, right? I think too, another interesting, not interesting, but like a funny way that text criticism works in its modern way is that it tends to favor a reading that is difficult, right? This is the principle of favoring the difficult reading that's most likely to be original. But the problem with that is, if you run into a reading that is difficult because of a slip of a pen, right, you've automatically defaulted to the wrong position. So if there's a theological issue in a text, so I don't know, maybe you run into a manuscript, and this is just totally extreme, that might put the negative particle in front of Jesus is God, right? Maybe it says Jesus is not God, course, this is just an exaggeration. Based on that principle of textual criticism, you've got to come to that reading and say, oh, this is a difficult reading, so it must be true. And of course, we know that that's not the case. So the principles that they use in textual criticism are not hard and fast rules. So I don't want to give the impression that they are. But what I'm saying is that they will get applied inconsistently. There's no way to objectively verify that that's the case. So yeah, I think textual criticism, that there's some good in it, but I think it's still like a very long work in progress.